All right, you guys, let's get this started then, right?
Because really, what could go wrong once you press record, right?
Exactly. What could go wrong? It's all going to be very perfect.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Crazy People Podcast. That guy over there is Maurice. I am Russ, and this is we made a deal early on. Every fifth episode, we do just us without a guest. So we apologize, or we're very happy for you, whichever way this goes.
First of all, I have to say I like your T-shirt. That is fantastic.
I know a guy.
You know a guy?
Yeah.
That is fantastic. Look at you.
Cheers.
You got the oh there. Can we please have a merchandise? Go on. We have a merchandise going on. How are you doing, sir? How is life treating you?
Louisville, Kentucky in the spring is a wonderful place to be, so long as you don't have allergies, and everybody here gets allergies because it's so allergic. I was joking with people the other day. I love the colors of spring here in Kentucky, the greens of the trees and the purples of the flowers and the yellows of the cars as they drive by covered with pollen.
As somebody who's allergic against nature, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. How's life in your neck of the woods, my friend?
We heard about areas in the world where there is spring.
Mm-hmm.
We don't seem to be one of them. I mean, there's Poland and things are getting gray, but the temperature hasn't changed. The rain got a little bit warmer than it was like a month ago, but that's about it. And but things are going all right. A lot of business things are happening in our business. Yeah, I told you before off the air, as you say, right? I told you about a business and sales trip to Berlin. That was super interesting, and a couple of things that reminded me of some of the conversations that we have with Jeff Bajorek, Mr. Episode number 2.
Yeah.
But also with Austin last episode or 2 episodes ago.
Episode 8,
yeah. So as I told you, I assumed the sales role in our company. So now I'm in the lucky position to own the customer from the first time they become a lead all the way to the haters. Now all the way through customer success, lifecycle, key account management, and everything in between. And I had to think of Jeff quite a bit, right? I don't know if you remember, I asked him about how to ensure that your salespeople find their story, how to establish that, and so on. And I had to go through it myself, right? Not knowing that at the point I asked him that question back in, I don't know, January or February or whenever it was, that I would be the guy responsible just a few weeks or months later.
This podcast comes in handy, I guess. So
this podcast, I'm just it's teaching me left and right, I tell you. Yeah, but he talked about, and that is something that I wanted to ask you about, as you are in a sales role too, right? We had a discussion with Jeff where we talked about finding your sales story and find your pitch and finding your energy and so on. And how does that work for you? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I tend to agree with what Jeff said, which was really sort of just find yourself in it, and don't necessarily think you have to go everybody else's way about it. Actually, I've been talking to a couple of startups, kind of advising some founders about that same kind of thing, about somebody in the HR tech space and going, well, you don't have to be what everybody else is. You can figure out your own niche. And so when you go and present at a conference, you don't have to sound like everybody else. You have a unique story. You have a unique approach. And I've done the same thing myself. Try to understand where I feel the story resonates, because if I'm going to be the one telling the story, I really need to believe it. I need to understand it. Because if I don't, I go, hi, we have a great product. You love it. It'll be fantastic. And yeah, everybody will just fall asleep, right? So
yeah, that works. So that works well. Yeah. And yeah, I went through it, right? Initially, at the point where we talked to Jeff, I was like 9 months in, doing salesy stuff and trying to get our sales teams mobilized from the outside, kind of, and helping them create their own story and finding their way. And then we made a change. And now I'm the guy in charge. And it took me, even though I consulted from the outside, right? And I thought I had a very good idea of how they needed to sell.
yeah.
Now being the sales guy myself, it took me probably another 3 months to figure out my sales story. Right. And I'm the lucky son of a gun that created the new presentation, right? So
I was the guy who built the deck. I better be able to tell the story of it.
Yeah, and then still struggled to find a story, right?
Yeah.
Because building a deck that looks nice and that has compelling arguments and all of that is one thing, and it's only half of the story, pun intended. The other one is, how do you tell it, right? How do you approach a customer?
Yeah, 100%.
And I told you about, I mentioned the journey and the trip to Berlin where I met like 15 of our customers in 3 days, which I cannot recommend.
It's a whirlwind tour. Yeah.
It's totally fine to do that in 5 days versus in 3 days, especially if you have to drive a lot in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, along that trip, what really worked out is I learned from my customer what my sales story should be. Right? If you go kind of like through this drill of 5 meetings a day and plus calls, plus whatever, you kind of learn the hard way because you have to go through it fast, right? You don't have a runway of an hour to kind of get comfortable and then figure it out along the way. And that is interesting, to the point where I talked to a customer today, and you mentioned HR tech. I happen to be in the HR tech area too, or environment too, where I told her that, hey, if you want to have, and we work in the area of company benefits, employee benefits. And the first thing I told her is, hey, you can get employee benefits from anybody. You don't need us for it. And she looked at me a little funny, like, huh? Excuse me?
I figured you were going to be pitching me on why I should buy it from you. Hang on a second. Wait a minute.
She looked at me like, huh? Come again?
Yeah.
Did I click the wrong link, or what did I do wrong? But then I was able to utilize the sales pitch and kind of I think I was very clear in what differentiates us from the competition and makes it more compelling a story and more compelling a pitch to what their needs are, because that's something I figured out in the last couple of weeks. And she could see that within 5 minutes, I had her, right? Where, she was right there with me along the journey. And I hate presentations, by the way. I create presentations, but I hate following presentations in the order. I like to do improv, right? Where I click here, I click there, and whatever the conversation does. And she, that was a super cool experience to see that even though I got her off balance and she was kind of on the heels, like, look at me like, what are you talking about? That within minutes, I could see the excitement. I could see that she felt understood, because I wasn't talking about what it is that we do. I was talking about her needs, the ways of how I understood how her life is hard. I was asking her questions, and that was a very cool experience. And the first one of that nature, where it became so crystal clear, where I could see the power of the story and the power of your strategy.
Yeah.
Where you push a customer to the left, and after that, because they didn't expect what you're doing, that they follow you all the way through the call to where she left the call and said, this was impressive.
Yeah.
And that was really nice.
It is actually really cool when you can get that kind of external feedback. It's one of the things that I found in my history and in helping other people kind of articulate their story too, is that you want to feel good inside, that like this is resonating with me. I can feel passionate about this. I can live with this. But also you want to get that external feedback of, oh yeah, okay. And you see people follow you right down the path. You made me think about probably, it's a little more than a year ago, I was working with a services company. They were doing software development kind of work. And we were trying to help them put together a story that would resonate with customers and that everybody could kind of get behind. What happened was, for a long time, it was really about, what were their unique selling propositions. Their pricing was good and their quality was good. And so they'd like want to tell the story about the things that they were good at. But everybody kind of went, okay, yeah, whatever. And in the end, none of the salespeople really felt good about it. So they were just trying to figure out, how do we tell this story? What do we do? And it ended up being a lot more about people and convenience. And telling a story about people is really hard, right? Telling a story that's like personal about the people that you work with and stuff is much harder than like, oh, we have 17 gigabytes of something, right? You could just sell a feature and it's like, I can throw it out there all day. But telling a story about people is hard. But that really resonated with both the salespeople and the customers, because their customers were like CTOs, heads of engineering and stuff, who were trying to hire development and have development done and stuff. And everybody was talking about, oh, we do all this QA and we have all these tools and we have, whatever it is. But when you started telling about, here's the people that you get to work with, that I get to work with, right? And then you talked about, we want to make it really easy for you, which was really about the customer's pain, because making it easy for the customer is actually hard for the company, right? But it was part of it was about building a relationship, and part of it was about, hey, we want to solve your pain. And then you can tell that story, and here's how we do it, and here's why we're doing it, and here's how this whole thing works together. And that kind of a story resonates with people. But I think way too often people get a job in sales, or they think about starting a company and they're doing the sales part of it, and they're just like, I'm gonna go pitch my features, I'm gonna go pitch my price, I'm gonna pitch an easy contract, hey, no down payment, right, free first month, whatever it is. And people are like, don't care. See that all day long everywhere else. Like, it's like, what makes you different, right? Why you, right?
But that's not an easy thing to figure out, right? No. It's not so easy to say, hey, why are we different from any other benefit company that seem to be popping out up in even in Germany and in other countries anyways, right? So what makes you different, right? I think that's a challenge for any founder, not just a salesperson, but any founding company. It's like, okay, why you, right? It's not... It's rare that you are Apple with the first iPod or the iPhone in 07, or that you are Tesla 10 years ago, right? Where nobody does what you do. Usually we are yet another bottle of water, right? You invented water? Let me know. How did you do that, right?
Yeah. Oh, we have a blue cap on our bottle of water.
Exactly.
Come on.
And our water is wet.
It's like the thing everybody has.
And that is, I think that's the magic sauce, right? Do you find your pitch that differentiates from all the other companies that are just like you. Just instead of blue, they're red. Instead of red, they're green, or whatever, right? And but that's also the fun part about it, right? Especially if you are founding a new company and if you go in there. And but I've been talking to many new companies, many startups, many founders. I think that sometimes the original founders, if they are the SMEs, so the subject matter experts of the topic, they don't get that pitch. They are not able to step back far enough from the actual product to be able to tell that story. What do you think? I mean, you're consulting a ton of startups.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the problems. But I've seen it happen in a couple of ways too, where the founder or the technical person is kind of suddenly in charge of trying to talk to customers, and they want to talk about all the stuff that they know, because they know the ins and outs of the product, they know the ins and outs of the technology or the ins and outs of the industry, and they want to throw all the jargon around or whatever it is. But I also, even today, I talked to a partner, and I work with a network security software company, and we were talking about how the new product that we recently released is super important to us, but to the customers, it's really just it's a cool thing that makes things better, but it's not enough reason to go and start something. However, talking about network security actually is a thing that people really want to talk about. And I'm like, yeah, but that's boring. We've been talking about that for years. It's like, well, now it's starting to catch on, right? So even me, who I know these things, I get so enmeshed in the technology and that side of it, where I'm like, look at this cool new technology we're releasing. And they're like, you know what that is? That's the cherry on top of the banana split, right? But that's just the cherry. It makes it super appetizing. What a great thing. Like, it wouldn't be the same without that. But what really gets people excited is all the ice cream in the middle, right? And you go, oh, okay. The thing that I thought, 5 years ago, everybody wanted to talk about and they didn't. Now they finally got around to it. Okay. Yeah.
Now they caught on.
Yeah. And listen to all of our other episodes for more information on people who missed the timing and smashed into a wall, because that's what happens. So
yeah, that's super interesting. And
very common story.
Very, very common story. The thing is, I mean, you never know when you're founding a company, right? You're rarely in a situation like I am at right now, where we are founding out a subsection of our original company, and just to be better and easier to invest into and so on, right? And where you already have your proof of concept and you already figured it out. The sales pitch works, the story works, and so on, right? But what I found is that these founders that are the SMEs, they sometimes have a hard time, as I mentioned, to split away from the in-depth knowledge. And they also have a hard time to just run the company afterwards, because that's not how they started. They started out experts in their field and not experts in starting a company, because experts in starting a company oftentimes lack the ideas what kind of company to found, right? Unless it's a consulting company, right? And that is something that is, and we heard a couple of stories like that, right? Where it, and you're probably going to hear many more, where there's people that are so versed in what they are doing that they're missing the boat on, okay, how do you run your sales team? How do you establish marketing? What is necessary marketing? What are the processes that you need to think of, right? How do you make this entire operation more efficient, right? Yeah. Because they are so into their products, that's not what I want to talk about. That's not, it takes energy away from them, right? Yeah. And so how do your startups that you work with, how do they deal with that? other than asking you.
Yeah, they find somebody to advise them. No, much more often we end up getting into a discussion, and I think this might resonate with you too, Maurice, is how do you sort of find your blind spots as a founder, right? How do you pick a co-founder? Or a lot of companies that I talk to end up adding a co-founder, quote unquote, right? But really like a year after or a year and a half after. It's not, oh, I'm a co-founder that started 18 months in. Well, that's not a co-founder. Okay, whatever. Just put your title on LinkedIn. There you go. But it's that whole idea of how do I be self-aware enough to realize that I'm not that good at all these things, right? So I tend to work with a bunch of founders who they're either very technical or they're product people. And they're like, I know this industry, I know this product, I know the exact product I want to build. I went and hired a bunch of folks somewhere who could write code and it kind of works, but they were hands off on the engineering. And now they're like, oh, now we got to go sell it to somebody. What do I do, right? And you have that kind of problem all the time where people kind of hit the wall. And my encouragement is always do it poorly. It's okay. Do it poorly, but try it and get out there, because I've also worked with people. I worked with a guy who built, it was really, for lack of a better word, it was really sort of a matching software for executives, right? For like interim, partial executives, trying to match them up with people. And talking to that guy, he was like, oh, the sales thing should be super easy. And I'm like, well, do you sell this? And he's like, well, no, but it should be really easy because we built a great product. And we know how this works. We know the whole process, and we know, yeah. I'm like, yeah, but have you ever done it? and it's that, like, let me get out there and try it, and then realize that I have a blind spot. So that's, sometimes you got to get there to get that self-awareness. Sometimes people just go and know, you're like, I'm hopeless at sales. I have no idea. Help me, please. And I always tell people, in fact, I had this conversation with a guy the other day. I said, actually one of our subscribers I was talking to on the podcast, who said he looks forward to listening to the podcast when it comes up, when he's working out and stuff. So,
nice.
But and I was saying, when I talk to people, I'm like, I will help you figure out a sales process. I will help you figure out what the sales thing should be, so that you can then go and find a sales co-founder who fits that niche. But understand, they're going to come in and they're going to make it their own. But I can help you kind of uncover that, figure that out. But I do it by getting out and talking to customers and figuring out what that really is, and then go, okay, you need a guy who's really good, who has a lot of connections in enterprise software companies. You need somebody who's really good at building, lead generation systems. You need somebody who's really, whatever it is, right? Whatever their needs are.
Yeah.
But I think the whole thing, all of that boils down to, are you self-aware enough to realize what you can't do, and then to be humble enough to say, I need somebody who can help me do that, somebody who can take on that thing, who also, I'm the technical engineering guy, or I'm the product guy, or whatever it is, but I can work with them. Like we can team up, we can be partners. Because it is, in a lot of ways, it is like being married. You're going to spend a lot of time with that person. You're going to smell bad, and they're going to be tired, and you still got to get along.
Yeah, and then comes financial pressures, and maybe you have different ideas or different priorities, because obviously you're not 100 people team where you only needed 50 so that you can throw people on stuff, right? You have to do multiple things at the same time. And sometimes what in my experience, because we talk about a lot about sales, right? But even if you talk to developers and so on, it's different if you're just in your garage or in your basement or wherever you want to develop, some dark room, I assume, if it is anything like me. Then it's easy to do that, and do that within your pocket, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you have to do it in the context of a company, and context of your company with customers, and there's an expectation coming from the outside. Now you need so funny things like a roadmap. Now it needs to be a roadmap that you can at least somewhat depend on.
Yep.
Not just for your sales guys, right? And those sales guys, I tell you, those are the those are the worst, right?
Yeah.
But you need to sometimes sell what's not there and what's not yet on the shelf.
Yeah.
I'm all about selling stuff that's on the shelf, but you need to, especially if you're a smaller company, you need to be able to provide some perspective. But if you don't have the perspective yourself, how are you going to create that?
Oh yeah, well, and when you have a co-founder or co-founders, a lot of times I advise people that you ought to have three. The sort of three-legged stool analogy helps me. But if you have co-founders there, you need to be able to, when the salesperson is promising something that's quote unquote aspirational, they need to have buy-in from the engineering person that that's an okay thing to promise and we can get there. And they need to have buy-in from the operational person. Is like, yeah, we can support that. We can make that work. And that's why I say it is, in a lot of ways, it is like a marriage. You've got to figure out how to work together, and like having a roadmap or having a customer relationship thing or have all of these things, they have to really mesh together well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that is the communication part, right?
Yeah.
Where you need to communicate. So this is what I'm selling out there, or what I want to sell out there. Is that something that we can achieve at all? Is it something that we can do in the software, or it's going to be manual labor, right?
Right.
Can we fake it until we make it, kind of, right? Yes or no?
I remember the first time I heard the term swivel chair functionality. And I was like, what is that? And we were sitting in a big meeting around the conference room, and one of the guys just spun around in his chair. And he's like, I take it from here and I hand it over there. That's why I'm on a swivel chair. So I said, oh, so it's actually like, that's where the human gets involved.
I've never heard that before.
It's a swivel chair function. I take it over here, I do something, I swivel over there, and I put it down, I do something, off it goes to the next person.
That is fantastic.
But yeah, when you're a startup, that's you figure out co-founders that way who also can work that same way, right? Finding somebody who's not ready to do that means you're going to have a bad marriage, and your startup is going to not survive. Yeah,
I mean, the sales guy that we had, and by the time this airs, it will be long enough time between. It's or other sales guys that I work for, because what I always have a hard time with is people that need everything perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an improv guy, right? I go into meetings, and we've been in those meetings together, right? Where the improv starts, and whatever plan we had is out of the window 2 sentences in, right?
Yeah.
But still, there need to be some guardrails in where you can do that. And as long as you stay within those guardrails, it's fine. But I'm getting super frustrated with people that need everything perfect, where I'm like, it's never going to be perfect. Whatever you think is what the expected behavior is, there will be, especially in the next meeting, there will be somebody who wants something completely different and think that everything that you just said is idiotic, and that's not going to work. So what are you going to do then? Are you just going to get up and say, yep, this customer is not for me?
Yeah,
that is a fair behavior, right? It's a fair assessment. Or are you saying, hey, let me try a different angle?
Yeah.
So what is it that you need? Instead of starting with my story first, right? And I need these, because from a marketing side, right, I need these 55 different documents, information, details, presentation, whatever. Until I don't have them, I cannot sell. That's no.
Yeah.
I can write you books full of information, and you're not going to sell because you just don't want to sell.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You just don't want to pick up the phone, click the Zoom link, or whatever it is that you do, right?
Yeah.
You just don't want to do it. And yeah, that's something I'm struggling with, getting in front of a person like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes you can. I think you're exactly right. I think sometimes you can run outside those guardrails that you set for yourself and mess up, and your other co-founders, your other co-workers, your team are all going to go like, "Wow, what'd you do?" But I think if you have those guardrails, then you have to figure out whether that customer on the other side is somebody who can work with you within those guardrails. Maybe you're all the way on the one side guardrail and they're all the way on the other, but you're still in the same kind of zone. You're like, it's okay. We can, even if we're not lined up exactly, we're still kind of going the same way. What we're doing will fit kind of what you need. What you want to get to is kind of where we're going. Oh, okay, we can make this fit. But yeah, sometimes you have this whole kind of like thing, especially with coworkers sometimes, where it's just you're kind of out of alignment, right? I see this sometimes with people who found companies with like people that they've known for a long time. Sometimes where that's a dream come true, and sometimes where it's just like, I never knew you were this way, even though we've known each other for 10 years. So what do you think about that? Like people who are like, because we talked about kind of looking at co-founders, what happens when you're co-founding with a friend, with a buddy, or with a long-term co-worker or something like that? What do you think?
Well, it depends, right? How close is that friendship? So I have nothing against co-founding, doing stuff with people that you know, right? And that is fine. But is it the guy that you also play tennis with every weekend, where the wives or girlfriends know each other, the kids play together, you've been the best man and whatsoever? At which point is it too risky to do that? Because what you maybe learn, or the entitlement that comes with a close relationship like that, especially if it is not on the same eye level, right? If it's on the same eye level, you're going to fight and you're going to figure it out, right? But if it's one is the boss and the other isn't, I've seen that becoming an issue. Because the other guy becomes, a lot of times becomes entitled, or there's some unfairness happening eventually, right? Where I think the emotional distance isn't there to be fair, which sounds weird, but I've seen it go wrong every time. Like to know each other, to have basic information, to know that there's a trust and there's a general liking, right? I've seen that work well most of the time, actually, right? But the close buddy where you work and then you go party and all the other entanglements are happening, I've seen that crash and burn more times than not. And I mean like big explosion, Tom Cruise movie type crash and burn, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There's definitely, I think there's definitely a cultural element to it too. Because I know people who started companies, I'm just like starting a bakery or a pet store or something, right? With started with my brother-in-law, and we get along so well, it's gonna be great. And then, in month 6, it's really hard to make payroll, and the brother-in-law is like, well, I'm planning on going vacation, so I gotta get paid. And like, well, yeah, but we have the people who work at the front of the store and they can't get paid. What do we do? Like, you run into each other. But then I've also noticed in some, like, I know a bunch of people who are from India, some who are still in India, and some of those folks in that culture, they have this thing where they'd get into that situation, like where they can't make payroll, they would yell and scream at each other for a half hour, but then they would sort it out, and then they would be best of friends right after. And it'd be like, well, that's just because that was just the way they kind of like, this is how we resolve an issue. We just throw it out on the table and we scream at each other for a while, and then we come to a resolution, and then we're good again and we're happy. So there's a certain element, I think, and maybe it's cultural, maybe it's just trust, maybe it's like, I know we're going to be friends after this anyway, so this is really hard, but you got to tell me I'm ugly. I got to tell you, you smell. We got to kind of wrestle with the stuff and then get through it. And I think not everybody has a relationship where they can go like, hey, we're going to be friends tomorrow, but right now we got to hate each other until we get through this thing, and then we can be friends again, right? But sometimes that's really hard to do, especially if you've been friends for a long time. You have like this real set relationship and roles in a relationship.
I think sometimes you're totally right, and I think sometimes where that comes from is if you're close friends,
Mm-hmm.
I think you tend to not talk enough about the stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Right? You just assume, and we all know what assume means, right? You just assume that you're going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the stuff needs talking about. Like, what do we do if you don't have this? What do we do if things go wrong?
Yeah.
Right? You're not interested enough in the other person because you assume you know how the other person ticks in every situation. Mm-hmm. To inquire about, hey, what do we do? What do you think about this? Because this guy's going to think about that, and it's not going to be a problem with that person, right? And it's an angle that you never even had a touch point, right, of that personality, and that's difficult, right? It's I mean, again, you mentioned the marriage part, right? In a marriage, you have to talk about a lot of things that you didn't anticipate.
Yep.
Whatever the marriage started, right? But you have to learn to have these conversations, right? Because if not, the marriage is going to fail, just like your company's going to fail.
Yep.
And that's in the business area. That's why I think it's sometimes easier if you have a certain likeness, your friends and your buddies, but it's not your best man. It's not the whatever, right? Godfather to your children, and you've known that person since kindergarten, and you hung out through everything, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's an interesting situation. Did you ever have that situation where you had a company with a best friend? Or a very good friend?
I worked for, I was employee number 3 for a pair of friends who had been friends forever, and they were like coworker friends, but they hung out a lot. And then the problem was the company that we built together really got successful, and they both then individually wanted to claim credit for the success. And the real answer was, if everybody had just taken a step back and looked at it, the reason for the success was they had worked together really well for a long time, and they were actually really good partners at working together. But then when they got some success, they both wanted to go, look, it's because of me we were successful. No, because of me we were successful. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for that company. But great friends before that, sitting with them and working with them and hanging out with them in the early days of the company was fantastic. Sitting with them and working with them, and then having to carry messages between the offices from one to the other because they wouldn't talk to each other toward the end is a little bit awkward.
Yeah, I get that. I had this situation where I've seen it implode, where I wasn't one of the super friends.
Yeah.
And I also been involved in it, right? Where I was buddy with somebody, and but however, what happened there is the interests changed, and one wanted out, and that was okay. But that party was still the main owner, and the other side wasn't the main owner, but still did all the work. And then the company didn't work, right?
Yeah,
and then came the accusations, you're not doing it right. Like, dude, you're not here. What about if you have clever tips, why don't you get involved again, right? If you're not doing that, then shut the hell up, right?
Yeah. To some extent, though, I think founding a company is this weird mix of capitalism and communism, right? Because on the outside, you have to be a capitalist. You have to be like, how do we earn money? How do we pay the bills? Or this is really super important. But on the inside, you have to kind of be communist. Like we're all in this together. Like everybody's going to bring what they can bring, and everybody's going to get out what they need to get out. And we're all going to be, comrades for a little while inside. And if you can't maintain that balance, especially with friends, it implodes, like you said.
Yeah, I can tell you it's much easier now that I'm at the average age for a company founder than when we founded the first company at age 20 or so, right?
Yeah.
Very different, because at age 20, you have all these things going on, right? You're still finding yourself. You want to prove yourself and to everybody else that you're the man, the girl, or whatever.
Yep.
And that kind of like at our age, at 40-ish plus many years, you just want to kind of make it, right? And it doesn't matter. I mean, there's still people that want to be the guy or the person.
Yeah,
that's fine, but I'm not going to work with them.
Yep.
But it's generally you find people at that age where you're like, okay, let's make this happen, right? Let's be successful. It doesn't matter who's
let's go do a thing,
the person, right? And takes credit or whatever. It's like it has to be all of us, because we probably all failed often enough by trying to be the guy. And if or do it by oneself, and if it is equally dispersed around many shoulders, it usually works much better, right?
Yeah. I think one of the first companies that I invested in was a guy who was that he was the guy. He was doing it all. He was gonna carry the load, and he finally matured enough to realize, oh, I can't do this all by myself. And then he built a team, and then the team really made that business just go great guns, right? So sometimes you gotta fight your way through it to mature enough and hope you don't die before you actually then the business can survive and grow. Sometimes you just run smack into a wall like I did, and like, well, too bad, game over, go work for somebody for a while.
Yeah, and I told you, right? I'm founding yet another company. It's got to be company, what is it, 5 or 6 or so. And let's see how this one works.
We keep applying all the little bits we learn along the way, and hopefully it'll get better.
Exactly. Yeah. But the ego thing is funny. As you mentioned, working for a team, right? So I like working at was it with Jeff? No, we talked about it in a different context. I like having people in my team that are much younger than I.
Yeah.
And I encourage them to let me know if I'm messing up, right? And they don't believe me. I'm like, no, I literally don't have an ego. I just want to make this thing look great, be great, do whatever. Tell me if I'm messing up.
Yeah.
And
I'm not 20 anymore. I can take it. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't have an ego. I don't care. I just want to give it. And they're like, no. and eventually they get there. And that's where I see them develop, right?
Yeah.
Because then once I let them know that I don't care about being told off, like, no, this is wrong, right? They don't care. It's kind of in a basketball analogy, or surprise, the basketball analogy. It's I don't know if you're familiar with Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan, where Greg Popovich said, if I can scream at my best player, future Hall of Famer at that point, and tell him how much he sucks, what is the last guy on the bench going to say? Like, well, if he is okay with being screamed at, what am I going to do, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that I think it's 100% true. I think you've got to. They tell. I've heard a bunch of different business stories. One about Mullally at Ford when he took over, about how he told people that he wanted them to report real statuses for all their projects. And the first week they were all green, and the second week they were all green, and third week they were all green, because nobody believed him that he wanted the real status. And then suddenly somebody came in with one red, and he was sure he was going to get fired. And instead, Alan Mullally just said, "Okay, who can help this? What can we all do? Let's fix this together." And everybody went, "What? Nobody got fired? Oh, maybe it's okay." So I think it's human nature, right? You gotta kind of learn that you are safe, and that it's okay to tell the boss that this is not working and this is a problem. Or it's okay to talk to your co-founder and say, "Hey, I need you to step up here, or I need to step back here, whatever we're gonna do," right? And that kind of communication is just super, super critical. And you got to learn that it's okay to do it. That's the big leap. After that, it gets way much better. So.
In some podcasts that I listened to, one of the CMOs said that he introduced the most career risking move of the month and the year, whatever.
Yeah.
And they would have actual awards and an award ceremony and whatever. And that one of the guys, and that it really helped their team to relax and just try to become better. Because one of the guys, they had a big, and it's a big retail company and online selling and whatsoever. And he created a promotion, and he was able to cut down the entire time that it took them to create that promotion from several months, I'm talking 3-6 months, down to a few weeks.
Yeah.
One little issue, they said it was like if you purchase for $50, you get a certain amount back, right?
Yeah.
That guy, with everything that he did, it was great. And however, he said what he did is, if you purchase for $50, you get $50 back, right? A kind of reduction in price.
Yeah.
And that obviously
everything's free as long as I only buy it $50 at a time. Yeah. Whoa.
That obviously doesn't work so well. However, she was like, I could have killed the guy, right? Yeah. For not seeing that little thing, but instead I've chose to award the guy because he managed to reduce the lengthy process where we probably didn't run enough promotions from several months to just a few weeks. Yeah. And everything worked, but he just overlooked that one little bits of information. So she said, when he stood there and he was ready to be fired, she picked something and called the team together and awarded him the most career risky move of the year. They all had a good laugh, and then they were fine with seeing that, okay, they didn't have to be perfect. Yeah. Right? They had to try to do the best that they can and try to push the team overall and the company overall to be better. Yeah. But that mistakes could happen, and it was totally okay for that to happen. And they have a chuckle, let's correct this and move on, right? Let's not do that again.
Yeah, that's psychological safety, right? Is the ability to say, hey, we messed up, but that's okay because we made a lot of progress as we did it. Yeah, right? We took a risk, we fell on our face, but we learned a whole lot from doing it. And when you build a culture that celebrates that, especially as a young company that doesn't really celebrate failure, but celebrates the learnings from failure. Like, no, it's not a good idea to give away $50 with every $50 purchase. Don't do that again. But we learned a whole lot. We gained a whole lot. Like, celebrate the learning, celebrate the victory, and try to figure out how can we all then go and fix the failure without building 25 layers of bureaucracy around it to catch every possible problem, right? So but that kind of a culture can be really, really healthy and can grow really fast, right?
Yeah, I think what I liked about it was the mistake that guy made wasn't a mistake because of laziness, sloppiness, or whatever. It was because he pushed the envelope so hard that, okay, there was no oversight and whatever, but everything else that was achieved while doing so, naturally there was a mistake. Unfortunately, it was that mistake, right? I think it's a great thing. It's a great thing to encourage, let's everybody encourage to what can we do to make the company better? And if something goes wrong along the way, let's figure it out as a team and correct it as fast as possible. But that push to innovation, that push to not perfection, because there's never going to be perfection, but kind of like greatness, operational greatness, or creative greatness. I love that approach, right? So I think it's the only way to really get somewhere, if you push your employees to try new things, right? And not hang them out to dry if whatever they try is not working out that well. Yeah, we had a fellow customer, right? They had that operationalized.
Yep.
Even in their targets, where every employee once a quarter, they had to do something that hasn't been done before, or create something new, develop a new idea for whatever the scale was for that. I love that idea too, right? Yeah.
I think you hear sometimes when people lament their company culture and things aren't the way they used to be, and we've lost a step. It's a lot of times it's because, well, we used to be able to take those risks. We used to be able to really try something new. It used to be okay to do something, and now we've become more political or whatever, and it's just not safe, or we're not encouraged, or but you're right, you can operationalize risk taking, right? Google famously early in their growth, they mandated it, like you have to work some percentage of your time on projects that may or may not turn out to do something, right? And Gmail, like one of the biggest products in the world, came from somebody's, hey, I think we could do this thing, right? Not even their main job. So you get great innovation if you can systematize it and make it safe to build something that's totally stupid and it smashes and falls apart. Okay, but you learned something, you tried something new. That's a positive thing.
Yeah, I like that. And so I copy that to a degree, where I told my team, I don't want you to be stuck in calls on Fridays. I want you to think. And then they looked at me like, oh, there goes Maurice again.
What? I'm supposed to think? What are you, crazy?
Think. And I was like, yeah, think. But I want to know what you thought about on Monday.
There you go.
When we have our team meeting, I want to know what was going on in your head, right? It doesn't have to be the great idea, but I want to know what you thought about, and what you wondered about, and what you were curious about, and what you did, and what you read up on, and that kind of stuff.
I try to work into my calendar every week a couple of blocks where I block off an hour or two, not to scroll through LinkedIn or just pick up the latest news, but to go and dig into something that I'm curious about, some piece of software that I think about working with, or some idea, something that somebody's written about, something. And I think it's just so super important for people to actually take that as a thing. And then also, I think you're exactly right, share it out. Right. Here's the thing I'm thinking about. I did some research on this. I'm working on this, and share it among people, and everybody can sort of run with it a little bit, or at least learn something.
Yeah. It's kind of our standard question, right? How do you stay current? That is along those lines, right? How do you keep yourself on the heels, right? And not settle in, whatever settle in means, right? Into your role, into your circumstance, into wherever your company is at that point. You have to keep yourself and your environment on the heels, so that you not falling into the trap of not seeing one of those blind spots, right?
Yep. Yeah.
If you don't
for me, it's just about Ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT, what should I be learning this week? What should I stay current with this week? And it gives me some answer, and off I go. I now have known whatever I need to know. No, I'm joking, but it's I think it is so super critically important that people have gotten, many people have gotten, and I've gotten into this habit myself, of doing the work, working in the business, and not pausing to work on the business, right? To stop and back out a little bit from where you are and go, am I doing this thing right? Am I doing this the best way that I can be doing it? Is there something new that I should be trying? Is there a different method? And you get, by the end of Friday, you're just exhausted from doing all the work, and you go,
and you just collapse.
Yeah. But I think you need to, which is why I've started to break out that time to say, hey, I don't want to do it Friday afternoon, because if I do it Friday afternoon, what I'll be thinking about is what bourbon should I try this afternoon? That's about what I'll think about. But no, if I break it out earlier in the week, I actually do think about something, learn something, try something new.
The bourbon or
well, that too, but it's one of the side effects of living in Kentucky.
By the way, we had a couple of episodes of a dry spell when it comes to bourbon. Didn't become a topic here for a few episodes.
That's really weird.
That? We had a bourbon streak in the first 3 or 4 episodes, and then dry, nothing anymore.
Yeah.
So here we go.
We got to work on 10. That. There you go.
Come back.
it's rounding the turn to come back home.
What is the next thing that you're thinking about? What's the next weird project that you're working on?
I am writing a science fiction novel that the open internet plays a part in. I'll just leave it there, that's a ridiculous idea. But I've spent enough of my life now. Well, I've spent enough of my life now working around people who are really passionate about keeping the internet open, right, and being transparent and stuff like that. That I just sort of have this idea of it's because it's science fiction, it's a dystopian future story, but where the open internet actually plays a part in the story. The internet is like a character, I guess. Will be. We'll see.
Nice.
So that's one of the ridiculous next things that there's always something weird. But I'm actually I'm kind of hopeful. We'll see how it turns out. But that's also in part because we had Dan Rosenberg on the show here a couple episodes ago, and he put his book aside for 20 years or whatever, and then finally picked it back up and got it published. And I was like, if Dan can do it, I can do it. Like, let's go. Let's write a novel.
That is perfect.
How about you? Great. What's your other than founding company number 6 or whatever it is? What else is what's new? What's upcoming in Maurice's life?
I'm not at the point where I want to start something new other than a company. It's where I would like to finish something. Because I have a book. I don't know if you remember the B-Sides book. That's the artsy picture book from New York.
Yeah.
I've been working on that for quite a while, and I haven't gotten nowhere other than selecting the pictures. The New York Academy needs a couple more courses that I've had in the pipeline for months, if not years, that I need to get done. Then I launched a clothing line, beginning of the year, that I somehow need to establish. This podcast, right? You're working on a podcast. I think I need to finish something off or develop something or doing whatever and not start yet another project.
There you go. My wife would probably say the same thing about me too. So
yeah, I made a deal with me that I'm not going to have more projects at the same time that I have fingers on one hand.
Oh, okay.
So I'm right up to let me see.
So you have 9 fingers on your hand? Is that what it is?
It's the company, book, store, academy, podcast. No, that's it. That's all I can do.
Okay. All right. Here's some weird spidery hand with a bunch of extra fingers on it. That's it. So.
Yeah, it's totally fine, right?
There you go.
No, that's a deal I made with myself. If I cannot figure it out with one hand what I'm doing too much. Right.
There you go. That's a
in
good
terms
rule.
in terms of new projects, right?
Yeah.
You can have established products and add new to them. That's fine. But you cannot have new projects more than fingers in one hand.
But that's literally like a rule of thumb, isn't it? So there you go.
Thumb and for friends, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thumb and for friends, exactly.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's a great place to wrap up episode 10, Maurice.
Yeah, and as far as I can see, right, you are right at the crossroads of two of them, right?
Yes.
You're wearing something from our joint clothing line on our joint podcast, right? So yeah.
My crazy people podcast shirt. Actually, I really like this. I just got it in, but it's actually super comfortable. I'm a big t-shirt guy. I'm a like all the time t-shirt guy.
I would like to be, but the weather in Germany right now is not allowing me to be the t-shirt guy. I'm still the big sweater, some Uniqlo heat wave, heat tech stuff guy right now because I hate freezing.
Yeah, I think it looks like we're finally out of the flannel shirt weather. So I was always a t-shirt and flannel shirt guy over the winter, but now I'm just be a t-shirt guy.
Yeah, I don't have a flannel shirt. I need to get that.
We can fix that.
I need to fix that. All right, dear sir. I think that is a fantastic ending to this show. The Crew Show, talking about what founding a company is all about, what finding your sales story is all about, and kind of reminiscing about the things that we talked about, be it with Jeff, be it with Austin, or any of the other crazy people that we either talked about and you've seen the episodes already, or the people that we've already talked about and you haven't seen the episodes yet. There's a lot of great things to come, and stay tuned. Don't touch that dial, we used to say, but now click on that mouse.
There you go.
Find us. All right? You guys have a great day and talk to you soon.
Yeah.